Cameron, I am Drew Martin. It's August 10th. It's closing line time, Saturday morning. Ian at Pabano on Twitter, welcome to the show. Happy Saturday morning to you. How you doing?
Doing good, Drew. Doing good because unlike last week, we found a way to hit the airwaves today. Obviously, last week we had a couple of issues, to put it mildly, but we're back. We're happy about it. And the closing line Saturday edition picks up and rolls on as usual. Business as usual, you could say, today, Drew. I'm looking forward to it. We got a little bit more to talk about this week. You know, for the last several weeks, it's been mostly baseball, a CFL game or two, WNBA. This week, we've got NFL preseason games to talk about. Still a full baseball slate, one CFL game. So it's just another sign that from an American football perspective, I know I've had CFL for the last couple months already here, but NFL and college football, Drew, it really is right around the corner. A couple of weeks, we'll be talking about games that count in both NFL and college football.
Well said, Ian. And NFL preseason, it's good to bet. You can get an advantage. I think it's a little subsector of sports betting that is beatable, in my opinion. But you're right. I mean, real NFL takes it to the next level. We got college football week 0, 2 weeks away from today. We'll be in South Florida for Miami versus Florida. We also got Hawaii versus Arizona that night. So good stuff coming around the corner. We're going to be breaking down MLB slate, CFL. We got a UFC bet from Ian as well. So stay tuned for the show for the next 30 minutes or so. We do apologize for last week. Technical difficulties. Google changed it up on us, but we got something good going here with StreamYard, Ian and I do. So hopefully this goes well. We can see the comments. We got Nasty N8 in the house. Good morning to you. Ty Clinton. Astros destroyed my parlay last night for Ty. He did cash with the Vikings, though. Let us know what you're cashing with, guys. What teams are hot? What teams you're looking to fade? Mo Diggs in the house. Good morning to you, man. And Ian Cameron. Matt Mad, what is up, bud? Hamilton Proud, absolutely. And Paco Healy, early on the West Coast. Welcome in, man. Let us know our Padres aficionado there in Southern California. Daryl Lyles here. Nutfish Allen. What's up, man? Love the name. One of my favorites there in Amarac. Welcome in as well. Ian, should we start off with MLB, or what are you thinking? North of the border football.
Yeah, we'll do MLB first. MLB, obviously there's some big series this weekend, and the two that stand out clearly, Cleveland and Minnesota battling for first in the AL Central. And, of course, the Nationals and the Mets. What a game that was last night. The Nationals and the Mets. Crazy. The Mets erased 2 3-run deficits in that game, including a 3-run home run from Todd Frazier in the 9th inning off Sean Doolittle. Sean Doolittle is not a big-time closer. I'm sorry. He's not. He is a guy that if there's a big-time lineup and a team playing well on the other side in the 9th inning against him, you can hit that guy. He is not a guy that I would lay down my life on getting the final 3 outs for me in a big spot. I mean, he is just not a guy that, I worry about him with the Nationals long term. I mean, that's a concern. And look at this Mets team. I mean, unbelievable. What are they now? 14-1 in their last 15 games. They look like they're finally going to lose. Same old Mets. They feasted on weak competition. They beat some sorry-ass teams like the Marlins and some other bad teams to pile up these wins. Here they go. First game against a pretty decent team, Washington. Look, they're going to lose. Not so fast. This magic has not run out just yet for the New York Mets. Another incredible win for them last night, and now they're knocking on the door of a playoff spot when it looked like that team was dead a little over a month ago.
Yeah, Ian, I feel like both playoff races, man, are getting real interesting here down the stretch. When you start talking the Mets, and I've thought this for a little while now, they're starting pitching with DeGrom. They got strikeout guys that can go deeper in games. Man, if they go into the playoffs, they're a team that I think could make some noise in the National League. And I know it's kind of a long shot, but I think they could make it all the way to the World Series, man, just because they're tough. Nobody would want to face them in a 5-7 game series because of that starting pitching. And if they're hitting, like their bats have kind of woken up here of recent, I wouldn't want to face the Mets. I think that they do make it into the playoffs, and they have a shot at making a run. Would you, kind of talk me off the ledge here of buying a flyer here on a long shot Mets to make the World Series?
Not at all. I've already done it. I can't talk you out of it. I've already done it. I was starting to see this run happen. Obviously, they acquire Marcus Stroman. which, you put him now with DeGrom and Syndergaard. Hell, even Steven Matz has pitched a little bit better recently. And all of a sudden, you've got a rotation that you got to fear now if you're the opposition for the New York Mets. And we know how important it is to have not one, not two, but even three reliable starters at the top of your rotation come October in the playoffs. The Mets now have that. And now their offense is really a lineup, I think, that you've got to respect. With, Alonso's had an amazing year. McNeil has been very good. I think Rosario's an underrated bat. You see Conforto last night with the walk-off game-winning hit. He's a capable hitter. All of a sudden, this is a Mets team, and their bullpen, hey, we ripped the bullpen to shreds, and rightfully so about a month or two ago. They couldn't get any outs. They were brutal. They were absolutely brutal. Even the pen has turned it around and been better in recent starts. Obviously, Justin Wilson had a little rough outing last night, but, aside from that, they haven't had those bullpen implosions, those bullpen meltdowns late in games during this hot streak they've been on. So the bullpen sort of ironed out the problems they had. Overall, the Mets are putting things together. Bullpen's been better. Starting pitching now is really good in terms of the rotation. Their lineup's capable. I not only took them to win the World Series, I took them to win the NL as well. Both of them value. We sometimes can see this where a team can just get red hot, get into the playoffs, and just carry it forward in October if they do get in. And the Mets just have that feel like they could be a team that pulls off that kind of run.
And Ian, what about today's card here? We got 957, 958, Washington, New York Mets, NL East, Corbin versus Syndergaard. Looks like it's been pushed up now about -110 up to about -120. There is a -116 at Bookmaker right now, total of 8. I like Syndergaard here. It's something I haven't bet yet, but I'm interested in your opinion. Would you like him today against the Nats?
Yeah, Dom Ricci, who's a big Mets fan, obviously follows this team inside. Now, I agree about Seth Lugo. Seth Lugo is a guy that's really been rock solid in that bullpen for the New York Mets. He's one of the and even Edwin Diaz has settled down, the closer. He went through a rough patch. He's been better of late. So everything looking up for this New York Mets team. And Drew, in terms of the game today with this Mets and Nationals team, look, I'm not going in front of the Mets. You know how I feel about these teams that are red hot, that are streaking, that are surging. When you have a team that's feeling it and just winning game in and game out, I don't make a case to try to be outsmart myself and say, hey, here's the day that they're going to lose. Here's the day I'm going to bet against them. That's not what I'm going to do. That's not what I do with teams when they're surging like this. It'd be a Mets or pass situation for me. Syndergaard actually has been a little bit more serviceable in recent outings for this team. He had probably a little bit of a rougher start to the season than most would anticipate. Corbin, lately it's been a little bit tougher for him. He has had those he had that one outing where really got rocked around a little bit. We'll see how he fares here in this ballpark. But, the Mets are riding an absolute tidal wave of momentum. It's got to be a deflator for the Washington Nationals that they had 2 3-run leads in that game last night and found a way to lose. From a momentum standpoint, I like it with the Mets today. It's a very simple bet for me. I throw out the starting pitching matchup. This is all about momentum. This is all about the Mets feeling it right now, finding ways to win. They got some kind of magic going. I think it's still a relatively cheap price, all things considered, laying about as low as -116 or so with the New York Mets in this game. That's the side I'm going to be looking at, and the Mets will be on my card today.
I like it. Dom Ricci also added Mets team total over. Anytime it's 4 or under is a good bet. And I'm with you. I mean, I don't like stepping in front of hot teams at all. If anything, I'm riding them. So here at a -120 price range, I like the Mets. I like that side a lot going against Corbin, who, like you said, had that blow up not too long ago. Ian, we just talked about the NL wildcard race. What about the AL wildcard race in your opinion? I like Oakland out west. I think that they can make a run here in the Central. I'm sort of worried here about Minnesota. I think Cleveland might be able to take over them. And then also Tampa Bay in the AL East here. That just their schedule in August alone, their bullpen has really come on of late, one of the better bullpens in all of baseball. I think the Rays make it as well. Do you have an opinion here on who you're liking down the stretch in the American League?
Well, you got like the momentum that you're seeing, obviously, from the Cleveland Indians, and for the Minnesota Twins, who've had a very nice season. You really worry that this team, if they've got the I guess the finishing touch in them, so to speak, to try to hang on and win this division, because with Cleveland, there's a lot of guys on that Indians team that have been playoff players in the past, that have been to the postseason, that know how to play big time pressure baseball games late in the regular season and into October. And I think we're starting to see that now with Cleveland, that maybe that familiarity and that experience factor, and maybe Minnesota, the lack of it, starting to shine through. And Cleveland obviously taking the first 2 games of that series to now draw even with Minnesota for first place in the American League Central. Tampa Bay's been rock solid all season. I mean, 67-50. I don't think we talk about Cash enough. Kevin Cash. I mean, he's gotten a lot out of this team. I don't think the roster or the lineup on paper is anything to write home about, but they get good pitching. Their bullpen's solid, as you mentioned, Drew, and they get timely hits. And there are some guys that have stepped up. They're not household names. Tommy Pham's not a household name. G-Man Choi is not a household name. Some of these hitters on this Tampa Bay Rays roster. Austin Meadows is a burgeoning young hitter, I think, with a lot of upside on this Rays team. But these are guys that put together professional at-bats. They work the count. They're tough outs. And the result is they find their way to getting on base. And I think on paper, you look at their lineup, Drew, you say, how is this lineup, able to score runs? Well, you got to realize that sometimes, name brand value is not everything. Sometimes you can have these lineups where it's not a bunch of big names, but they're all professional hitters. They all, have more good at bats than bad at bats. They don't swing at bad pitches. That's what I find with the Rays. They don't swing at a ton of bad pitches. And it's, as a result, I think it's a lineup top to bottom that's gotten a lot more from the sum of their parts than you would think when you look at the lineup and the names on that lineup on paper. So I like the Tampa Bay team quite a bit. Obviously, for them, it's wild card or bust. There's no way they're going to catch the New York Yankees. They're for the division. They're still 9.5 games back, but they absolutely could make it into the wild card race for sure. It's wide open, and the Rays certainly have as good a chance as anybody.
I agree with you, Ian. And hey, a team I wanted to bring up to you in the American League, get your opinion on betting here in the next couple days. In the AL East, man, we got the New York Yankees, Toronto Blue Jays, green on the hill for the Yankees, minus 150-ish here, total of 11. And we're talking the Blue Jays here. Bichette's he's setting records as far as his first couple games in MLB. Toronto overall is hitting. They just won yesterday against the Yanks. Plus price here, not a crazy plus price, and it's been bought down minus 165 to about minus 150-ish, depending where you're shopping. Actually, there's some opinion as high as minus 160 still. So interested on your opinion on betting on Toronto, or is there not enough value today against the Yanks?
Here's the thing with New York. I think for the rest of the season, from a units perspective, profitability perspective, they're going to be a losing baseball team. I think it's going to be tough for them to be a profitable team. First of all, they're going to be laying outrageous prices on a regular basis, just as they have been. And second of all, you look at their position in the standings right now. Like, they're not being pressured for the division. There's going to be that sort of not go through the motions, but especially later as August progresses, and then we get into September, the final month of the regular season, you could definitely see some complacency setting in, and maybe a little boredom, for the New York Yankees. Like, let's get the playoffs going. Let's get the stuff that really matters going here. So I think you're going to see games like yesterday, for instance, where, the Yankees just had a flat game. I think you're going to see more than a handful of those from the New York Yankees in the last 2 months of the season. They're not being pressured. There's no pressure on them to go out there, balls to the wall here, final 2 months of the regular season. They're not a team I'm in any rush to back in terms of their pricing right now. Jacob Waguespack for the Blue Jays on the mound for them today. It's one of the funnier names in baseball, but he's a little mixed bag, I guess you could say, for the Blue Jays so far in his starts. He's had some good outings. He's had some bad outings, but lately it's been better for him. You look at his last 3 starts, 2.12 ERA. He's given up 4 runs in his last 17 innings of work. Then pretty solid. I mean, 3 runs allowed to Tampa Bay, 1 run allowed to Kansas City, 4 hits of shutout baseball in his last start against Tampa Bay 5 days ago. They're getting some solid pitching out of Jacob Waguespack right now, the Toronto Blue Jays. For the Yankees, looks like it's going to be Chad Green making the start for them. It's going to be a bullpen reliever by committee day for Aaron Boone's team. Not necessarily in love in terms of a bullpen by committee type of game. I don't love betting those teams in that kind of scenario, and I especially don't like betting them at about a minus 155 to minus 160 price, like the Yankees are laying here in this game. We've seen some money on Toronto. The Yankees have been very good off a loss, Drew. That is my one little issue. They've been very, very good after they lose their previous game. But I don't want New York here. I would lean Toronto. I don't think I'll bet it, but if I throw out a lean, the Blue Jays might get there again today. Waguespack's in good form. Obviously, this New York Yankee lineup's a terror. The Yankee lineup, I think, was resting some bats yesterday. I think they'll probably put a better lineup out there on the field today than they did last night. But I would lean Toronto.
Leaning Toronto here, and we got a bunch of guys in the chat box. If you could smash the like button here Saturday morning, it would help Ian and I out. Going to be here through football season. Got a lot going on for Saturday's show. Possibly adding some people as well, so it should be a good time. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be back next Saturday as well before college football starts the following Saturday. Ian, what are you thinking? Anything else we should throw out here on the MLB card before we move on to UFC and CFL?
A good question from the chat about Gary Sanchez for the New York Yankees right now. He looks like he will be available to be in the lineup today. That's Walla Walla Dos asking us that. Great name there. But yes, Gary Sanchez is going to be at least activated. So he's going to be available to be in Aaron Boone's starting lineup today. I would think he would be when it's all said and done. So that's definitely something that I would expect Sanchez to be in that Yankee lineup today in that game.
We got Nut Flush Allen in here as well. What's your favorite name in the chat box right now, Ian?
That's hard to pick. There's a bunch of them that are just they're unique, and I like that. I like some unique names, thinking outside the box here. Nut Flush Allen, and I remember there was one that's called Kapatsky. We know Parlay Poppy's an interesting one. Our pal that's going to be with us in Miami. There's a bunch of them in the chat that are interesting and unique and clever and oftentimes funny. So keep it up. I mean, some cool chat names in there on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, throw out some marketed plays, best play of the day, like Taint play of the day. We had the barbecue scandal play of the day for a little while back in March Madness. It made a good run. So anything like that, feel free to throw out. Love to read it. And we got this new feature on the back end where we can throw up different chats. So if anything you want to throw out, we can put it up there. Gas station sushi. That is a good one, Paco. I like gas station sushi as well. Walla Walla Dos is really good as well. Tomar in the house, welcome in. Always great opinions there. Houston, Baltimore, minus 250-ish line. Not really interested there. So your boy Soroka, Ian, on the hill for the Braves over minus 200 down in South Florida. Kind of like them as well, man. They did lose 9-0, kind of surprising two nights ago. Other than that, man, I was looking to jump on Tampa Bay, but with Morton on the hill against Seattle, undecided. I'm seeing one number out there for minus 215 at bookmakers, so a little too pricey on Tampa Bay in that one. But man, you want to move on to your UFC pick you wanted to throw out, or anything else on MLB before we get to best bets?
Yeah, Atlanta team total or even the full game over makes some sense to me in that game, Braves and Marlins. I will say this about Soroka. Like the guy, he's going to have a very bright future. There's no question about that for this Atlanta Braves team. No doubt about that. But I think Atlanta will hit Alcantara. He's been just bad in his last three starts. 6.32 ERA for Sandy Alcantara in his last three starts. But I think in this situation, you'll look at it, probably safer to go Atlanta team total over than the full game over. I don't know what you'll get from Miami against Soroka. Soroka has absolutely shut down the Marlins in the two starts he had against them last year. So I would be more inclined to look Atlanta team. Again, Atlanta money line's just way too outrageously high. I don't love the run line price either. I do feel pretty confident that Atlanta can get to Alcantara. And, of course, the Marlins bullpen is never any great shakes at the end of a game. So Atlanta team total over, which I haven't looked at what the number is right now. I would assume it's 4.5, 5.5, something like that. That's definitely a play I'll be looking at.
And when you start talking the Marlins and Soroka owning them, just the profile that he has, strikeout guy, gets up there in velocity, that is coming from the right side. Not that the Marlins really smash any type of profile, but if they do have success, it's against the Dallas Keuchels of the world, the guys that kind of, good accuracy, but maybe only throwing 89, 90, 91. That's where that the Marlins lineup can have success against these type of guys, the Syndergaards, Sorokas of the world. I'm telling you, man, this team just they're not going to be putting up very many crooked numbers. So I might add on to that. The Marlins team total under in this spot might be worth a look as well. So maybe add those two together. But
That's not bad, Drew. Double dip: Atlanta over, Miami under, 2-team totals. I could see it, both of them coming in.
I almost wonder, are we getting too cute with that though?
Yeah. Well, you know what? A 7-2. I could see this being like a 7-2 kind of game. I really could. And if that happens for Atlanta, and if that happens, you'll cash both.
Yeah, I get that, but then I guess what would be the reason then for not just taking Atlanta? It's just too pricey.
Yeah, that's just I like to get good, especially when I'm going to lay a run and a half, especially on the run line. I like to get a good price with that. Usually a good, rock solid, decent plus price return. If I'm going to lay a run line, I'm just not getting enough of that here with Atlanta. I mean, you look at Atlanta, if you're going to lay the run line with them, they're minus 145. To lay a run and a half with the Atlanta Braves here in this game. That's not the value I'm looking for when I'm laying a run and a half. So that's why I would prefer Atlanta team total over than anything else.
And we might have to double dip here. Atlanta team total over, Marlins team total under. I'll look that up as far as what the numbers are, because I think we might be onto something here, Ian. But hey, dude, while I'm doing that, man, I'll throw it to you. You want to throw out UFC?
Yeah, UFC. It's Uruguay card today. Some interesting matchups. Obviously, our buddy Clint in the chat has done his. He's a good MMA guy. He even tells me it's not a great card, and I totally agree. I mean, this is a very mundane, pedestrian card. Of course, they have an amazing pay-per-view lineup next weekend. Tremendous card. The return of Nate Diaz. You've got Cormier and Stipe Miocic. We've been waiting for months for this rematch between these two heavyweight behemoths. We're finally going to see that next week. So I think that's why the UFC is sometimes guilty of putting on too many fight cards, because did you really have to put one on today with such a huge event? Like, you could have taken a week off instead of throwing out this mundane, pedestrian, blah UFC card here in Uruguay. That's the word that comes to mind when I look at this UFC card today, Drew. Blah. It's a very blah card. It's very, very, yawn-inducing. And unfortunately, not only from a viewing and entertainment standpoint do I say that about this card, I feel that way about it as well from a betting perspective. I don't think there's a lot of great bets or a lot of great spots out there on this particular card. The one bet that I've made, and the one I like, is Gilbert Burns. And the price has come down a little bit. Quite a bit, actually, on this particular fight against Alexei Kunchenko, the Russian. But I think it's warranted. Now, the one bit of concern is Gilbert Burns is changing weight classes for this fight, taking that fight on short notice as well. Sometimes that can be two bet against situations here. But Gilbert Burns is a guy that's on a red-hot streak. He's been fighting pretty well lately. I've cashed a couple of winners with him in recent fights. And it's just one of those guys that he's rewarded me with good results, with winning in good current form in his recent fights, that I'm going to go back to the well with him, especially with him as an underdog. I understand maybe from a situational standpoint, if you could call it that, in the UFC. I know you don't think of situational handicapping a lot with UFC, but in certain situations, it does make sense to handicap a UFC fight that way. I know with Burns changing weight class on short notice, it could be a little bit of a concern, but I still like the price enough here on him to get the job done. Now, he's going to have to make sure he's a little bit less reckless. I mean, sometimes he leaves his chin exposed too much. That can concern me in some of his past fights, but he's got great finishing power. I think he's got that ability to maybe take Kunchenko by surprise here. And a guy that, again, coming into this fight, albeit at a different weight class, he has been fighting pretty well lately and in better current form. So I'm going to take the chance here with Gilbert Burns. It's my one and only play on this card at a plus 115 price. Is right around the price you can get on that fight right now with Burns.
All right, good stuff, Ian. Guys in the chat box, feel free to comment whatever you're looking to bet on today's card. A lot of guys out there with the UFC. And when was that Nate Diaz fight? Is that next week, you said, Ian?
That's next week. It's a great card. Diaz and Pettis, phenomenal. DC and Stipe Miocic is just absolutely outstanding. I think they're going to put on a great show. We've been waiting for this rematch. We knew it was going to happen after the first fight that Cormier won over Stipe. Stipe's got his rematch, got his opportunity here. Let's see what he can do with it. But that's a very good card next week that we've got on our hands. There's even some fights beneath that are very intriguing to me. Devontae Smith and John Makdessi is interesting to me. Derek Brunson and a surging Ian Heinisch. Fellow Ian, I got to cheer on him, right? But no, Ian Heinisch is coming on. I've liked the way he's been fighting in recent outings inside the octagon. You've got Yoel Romero, the soldier of God. We bow down to him against Paulo Costa. By the way, speaking of bowing, you notice Joe Rogan when he's doing a post-fight interview on these UFC cards, every single time he does like this little Japanese bow to the fighter.
I have noticed that.
Like, it was a pleasure calling your fight. It was a pleasure calling your fight. And he does the little bow there, like the respectful bow. Every single time Joe Rogan does that in the post-fight interview, it's hysterical.
It's not always like a full bow like this, but it always is like a little something. You're right. You're onto something, man. It's kind of funny what he does. I love listening to his show. By the way, man, he gets after it for sure.
Yeah. His podcast's amazing. Like his podcast, he's turned his Joe Rogan Experience podcast. He's turned that thing into just this small little pet project. Many years ago, into this huge booming phenomenon that so many people. You know what people have said about Joe Rogan's podcast? It's Oprah for men. It kind of does feel that way. It's Oprah for men. It's a great comparison. Or The View for men, or one of those chick shows you see on television, or The Talk. That's basically that for men. The Joe Rogan podcast. He does a great job. It's like millions and millions of subscribers now. He has it video streaming on YouTube as well, in addition to being an audio podcast. Like, it's blown up for Joe Rogan. He's making some good money from UFC, from his stand-up comedy routines, from the podcast he's doing. He's living a good life, Joe Rogan. I'm sure of it.
Joe Rogan, yeah. Hey, Ian, just to jump off sports quick, promise everyone. Matty Ice, the guy that worked at SBR, cool guy, by the way. He used to tell me he thinks Joe Rogan is the most listened to voice in human history. Would you agree with that?
You know what? He might be getting there. And you know what I love about the Rogan show, and we'll get back to sports in just a second. But one last thing is just the diversity of guests. Like, he's going to have scientists on. He's going to have political people on. He's going to have musicians on. Obviously, MMA fighters are on his show all the time. People that have been up in space, he's had them on. Historians. Just a wild array of topics and viewpoints, social issues, news issues, political discussions, all kinds of stuff and topics and things in our world are discussed on his podcast on every time he does one. It's a different topic, different type of guest, and it's a wide-ranging spectrum of guests. And I think that's what makes his show very, very unique and cool as well. Plus, you can swear on it and say whatever you want. If you want to drop an F-bomb on his show, it's okay. It's allowed. So very entertaining as well, and interesting. It can be funny at times. Like, he does a great job. It's a great podcast. There's a reason why a lot of people listen to it.
Absolutely, man. And Paco Healy and company were saying Drew's drinking a tequila sunrise or something like that. It's actually just an iced coffee, guys. But I doing the show, going to do some college football research after, and then definitely we'll have a cocktail Saturday afternoon. But Ian, you got plans today? Hamilton game?
Yeah, absolutely. If that is my plan today, Drew. It's game day. It's Ticat game day. We are Tiger Cats football.
Ooh.
And we're coming for a win, and we need a win because we're still sitting in a good spot overall in the season. We're 5-2. We got a lowly 1-6 BC Lions team coming into the donut box tonight, and these are dangerous games, Drew. I mean, BC, there's nothing to like about what we've seen out of this football team. They're 1-6 straight up, 1-6 against the spread. Nothing has worked for them. Their defense has been just a sieve, and it's surprising to see how bad the defense has been, considering they hired Devon Claybrooks, who's a defensive mind, as their new head coach. And it's, to me, now become apparent 7 games into the season. By now, Devon Claybrooks should be able to make some adjustments, get this defense to play better. He has not been able to do it yet. Now, they're off a bye week, but by now, I'm willing to chalk it up as this isn't a Devon Claybrooks issue. This is a personnel issue. BC doesn't have the quality personnel along the defensive line. They lost Solomon Elimimian in free agency to Saskatchewan. That's where he is now. That linebacking core is not what it used to be, and the secondary is garbage. Like, they have been giving up big pass plays left and right all season long, this BC Lions defense. I don't see how it gets fixed. I know you're coming off a bye. Okay, time to fix the defense. I don't buy it at all. I just don't think they have the quality players and personnel on that side of the ball to fix these problems. They've been giving up big points week in and week out, and I think they're probably going to give up points here today because I believe Dane Evans is going to play pretty well today. Dane Evans, of course, this will be his second start for my Ticats, replacing Jeremiah Masoli, who's out for the season, of course, torn ACL. Last week, they lost a heartbreaker in Saskatchewan on the road. They had a fourth quarter lead. He started out with an interception, believe it or not, Evans, on his very first pass. But after that, Drew, it got better for him. He settled in like he did in the game against Winnipeg when he came in from Masoli. In the second half, he was better than he was in the first half. And by the fourth quarter, he was moving that ball. They put up consecutive touchdown drives, Hamilton. Evans got it going on the road, tough defense. That's a good sign moving forward. Obviously, Saskatchewan came back late to win that game with Fajardo moving that ball, getting the touchdown in the final minute. But I was encouraged with Dane Evans getting better as that game went on last week. Now he's at home. Now he's got a full week of practice under his belt. That's going to help. More continuity with this offense. Oh, and he gets one of his biggest targets and weapons back in Brandon Banks at wide receiver. He's returning from injury after not playing last week, so that's a big boost for Hamilton's offense. Unfortunately for their defense will get Adrian Tracy back. That's good. Simone Lawrence obviously played his first game from suspension last week, or this week actually, he returns from suspension, beg your pardon. But unfortunately for the Ticats, they get some bodies back on defense. They lose a critical one in Delvin Breaux in their secondary, a guy that is so good as a cornerback in this league that, there's oftentimes opposing quarterbacks don't throw to his side of the field. That is how good a cornerback he's been for the Hamilton Ticats. He's out due to injury today, and that worries me a little bit because you've still got a savvy veteran quarterback like Mike Riley. I know it's been a rough season for him, but it's rough because of his offensive line, which has been terrible. They've given up the most sacks in the CFL, BC, but they've brought in some new O-linemen to start for this game, BC. The way I see it, it can't be any worse than the stiffs you had on that offensive line before the bye week, because this is the worst offensive line in the CFL. They've given up the most sacks. I think if Mike Riley even gets a fraction more time to throw the football, you might be able to pick on that Ticat secondary a bit, because losing Delvin Breaux is a big loss. So again, from a side perspective, I don't want BC. There's a lot of money coming in on BC. People are seeing it's BC off a bye week. It's backup quarterback for Hamilton. That's too many points for them to be laying. That being said, I have not seen BC do anything so far to warrant me trusting them, even catching double digits, as an underdog as they are here. But I am looking at this total. It's 51 and a half. I think we'll see points. I think Evans will pick this BC defense that's been terrible apart. I think he'll be more comfortable at home with one start now under his belt, with Banks, one of his best receivers, back in the lineup as well. And on the flip side, without Breaux in that Ticat secondary, I think there will be plays in the passing game for Mike Riley to the likes of Deron Carter, Brian Burnham, still some pretty good receivers on that BC team. If they can just give them some pass protection, some, for crying out loud, I think Riley can do some damage. So over the total is probably a good way to go in terms of the total for this football game.
Good CFL knowledge there for north of the border. Talking Hamilton, which Ian will be at the game tonight. Are you tailgating tonight, Ian?
Oh, of course, I always do. No question about it. We'll be doing the pre-drink, as we like to call it, before the game. We get a couple of beers going before the game. Maybe because it's a 7:00 game, we'll probably have a little barbecue before the game. Hot dog or burger or sausage on a bun type deal. It's absolutely a tradition for a home game, and then we watch the game. 7 p.m. Saturday Night Football. BC and Hamilton. Hopefully they don't put too many Hamilton games on Saturday and Sunday in a few weeks when NFL and college football starts. But again, I don't control the CFL schedule. It's just my hope anyway.
In the CFL schedule, so that kind of stuff a few weeks from now isn't actually determined. Like they're playing on Saturday, or they decide that later.
Yeah, what's frustrating about the CFL, Drew, and they do this year in and year out. I don't mind Saturday games. Like, they should do games on Saturday. You can't just say, oh, we're not doing Saturday games because of college football. And they shouldn't, because people in Canada, for the most part, they're not into college football. They're not. They don't follow it a ton. They love the NFL here, Drew. Like, the NFL is very big here. People love the NFL here in Canada, but college football, not so much. You got the few pockets of people that are interested in college football here. The others, not so much. What bothers me is that the CFL will go through June, July, and August with maybe 1 or 2 Sunday games for the first 3 months. And then basically September onward, there's a Sunday game almost every week. It makes no sense to me. Why are you going up against NFL head to head when you know this is a country that has a lot of NFL fans? We like our NFL football here. The common sports fan in Canada will tell you, if probably interview, 100 common, just general sports fans in Canada. They don't have to be bettors. I would say 80 of them at least like NFL football and watch NFL football. And to put CFL games Sunday in direct competition with NFL, it's not necessary. You got Thursday, you got Friday, you got Saturday. You've only got 4 games a week. Put 2 on Thursday or 2 on Friday, 1 on Thursday, 1 on Saturday. Don't do this Sunday game stuff. It's ridiculous. You shouldn't be going up against the NFL, especially with the playoffs in November, Drew. The playoff games are always on a Sunday. It's even more frustrating, but they're not going to change. They're set in their ways. It's been this way with their schedule process for years. It's not going to change at this point.
Well, so we also have Tomar saying NFL preseason, they should play CFL teams. That would be kind of interesting. Maybe 1 or 2 times, see how it goes. I guess they have different rules, though. So it might be a little.
Unfortunately, I know in soccer they do those MLS teams versus like your European elite club teams, and those usually don't end well for the MLS team. I get the sense that could happen with a CFL team against an NFL team. It's probably not going to end well for the CFL team. We got talent, we got players, but against an NFL team, I don't think I'd like that matchup for the CFL team.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. We got some NFL preseason to talk as well, guys, and hit MLB and best bets. Anything else you want us to talk about, throw it out in the chat box. Cool new feature. We can put it up here on the screen. Guys with a lot. Red Girl in the house as well. Paco Healy as well. Cincinnati, Kansas City, LA Rams, Oakland, Dallas, San Francisco. I always find it interesting. The Oakland Raiders -3 up to -4.5, 36.5 the total in. In the team on Hard Knocks taking money in the preseason. I'm always looking to kind of fade the team on Hard Knocks. I just think that they got a lot going on, and keeping their mind in it becomes a little bit of an obstacle anyway. More so in the regular season, I'm going to be looking to fade the Oakland Raiders pretty much out the gate, and bet they're under on their season win total. So do you have any interest here in this game, LA Rams Oakland? I'm looking towards the Rams, haven't pulled the trigger yet. It's an 8 p.m. start. Also, any other opinion here on the NFL preseason for tonight?
Now, obviously, the Raiders have garnered a lot of interest and eyeballs thanks to Hard Knocks, and of course the Antonio Brown situation, his foot issues, and then his helmet issues, and balking that he won't play another game until his helmet issue gets rectified. So you got a star receiver, you trade for him, or you bring him into Oakland. Now he's complaining about it. He's got foot problems. He's got helmet problems. I'll be honest. You know what the problems are? Brain cell problems, I think, with Antonio Brown, with some of the antics he's going through right now with this team. But nevertheless, it's been a focal point, obviously. The cameras are on them. You know what? I actually would prefer Oakland, Drew, in this game than the Rams. I don't see anything in terms of the Rams putting any sort of stock or emphasis here in this game. And you look at Sean McVay's recent preseason track record, it's nothing to write home about. You look at this Raiders team from a quarterback rotation perspective, not a bad rotation that they've got in terms of quarterbacks through this game. And John Gruden, going back to his days years and years ago when he was Tampa Bay Bucks coach, and of course with Oakland the first time around, he took the preseason seriously. He was a guy that would want to win in the preseason with this Raiders team. So the problem is the markets are onto this, Drew. Like, Oakland got bet up immediately because they're seeing the same shit that I'm seeing right now, that the Rams I don't think they care. They're resting tons of their starters. They have a very pedestrian at best quarterback rotation. But everybody's onto it. Like, Oakland opened, I think, around a field goal favorite here in this football game. Now it's all the way up to 4.5. It was as high as 5.5. And finally, we've seen some money come in on the Rams, buying it back once it got to 5.5. I just don't get a sense, Drew, from the Rams that they're putting a whole lot of stock into this game, whereas I think Oakland might just putting a little bit more into it. So, and I like their quarterback rotation to the Raiders. They've got guys that are able to come in there and make plays in the second half of the football game. And the first 2 preseason games, first 2 weeks of the preseason, you got to know who's going to be at the quarterback spot in the third and the fourth quarter. Because guess what? Those are the guys that are going to get the lion's share of the playing time. Likely that's when the game is going to get decided, third and the fourth quarter. It's not going to be who plays in the first and second quarter. Your point spread and your total is going to be decided by who plays in the third and the fourth quarter. And I like the Oakland quarterbacks tonight in that second half more than the Rams. And I get the sense that they might be a little bit more interested in a win in this game tonight than the Rams. So I would lean to Oakland still. But 4.5 in a preseason game, Drew, I'm not in a rush to lay 4.5 with anybody in a preseason game. The market's beat me to it, so tip of the cap to them.
And we got Tomar saying Rams are 1-9 the last 10 preseason games. I think that does carry over, in the subsector of preseason. Also, Guru Sports, Rams don't care much in the preseason. It's not the regular season. That's a great point as well. It is a different type of handicap. So also right money line. He's been talking about Daniel Jones and his performance in preseason here. Did you think there's a chance Daniel Jones can start week 1, Ian? I mean, I think a lot of people are putting a lot of emphasis on one preseason performance. He did look good, but still, I don't know. I feel like you got to see more in order to just kind of anoint him as a great quarterback and a good starting quarterback in the NFL. What do you feel?
Yeah, I probably right now lean to yes, that you probably should start Daniel Jones in week 1. Again, it was way too small of a sample size against the Jets on Friday night to say, hey, wow. But it was a great drive. It was an outstanding drive. We can't take anything away from it, but it was one drive. I want to see more. But if he comes out there week 2 preseason next week, for this New York Giants team when they're playing the Chicago Bears at home. That's their next preseason game. They come out there in that game and Daniel Jones plays very well again. I'm almost ready to say at that point, yes, you definitely make him your starter in week 1 because you know what you're going to get from Eli Manning. You do. I mean, and if Eli Manning has hurt feelings and he's bothered as a veteran guy, as a 2-time Super Bowl winner, that he might lose his starting job, to Daniel Jones. This is not about Eli Manning's feelings. This is not about anything but looking at the future. And you got to see if Daniel Jones is your future at quarterback. And if he has earned that opportunity to be your starting quarterback week 1 by merit, by the way he plays in August in the preseason, he should be allowed to start. Pat Shurmur, let's be serious here. Let's try to move toward the future. If Daniel Jones plays again in week 2, like he did in week 1, where he's accurate with the ball, not making mistakes, not turning it over, and putting points on the board, you're going to have to seriously consider making Jones your week 1 starter. I don't give a damn about anybody's feelings. This is about a franchise and an organization and trying to turn around a team that's fallen on hard times the last couple of years. You got to see what you got in terms of your future at the quarterback spot. And if Daniel Jones plays well enough in the preseason to tell the coaching staff that, hey, give me a shot to start, I think you got to start him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you were saying there about like the situation of who you start, because obviously, Eli Manning's on the downslide of his career. Great career. I don't think a lot of people put, emphasis on what he has done in the past. But still, I agree with you. If the future is with Daniel Jones, you got to find out sooner than later. So might as well start him. Tomar's talking about, I liked Jones at Duke. He didn't have good talent around him, no NFL receivers. And Tomar, I don't so much disagree with you, but I will say this, man. Betting Duke games last year when Daniel Jones went out, I didn't feel like their offense, initially it did, but, having a quarterback that could move with his feet, I felt that they also it didn't like destroy their offense. So I just feel like with the quarterback coaching he had at Duke, I feel that kind of propelled him to do better at Duke than just his overall ability. I could be wrong. That's why I think he was overdrafted, and a lot of people think he's kind of better than he is just because of his quarterback coaching by David Cutcliffe at Duke. Cutcliffe is the guy that coached both Mannings in college as well. So I think that kind of helped him out in college a little bit more than people realize, and it helped him get paid in the NFL draft. But I don't think it will benefit him going forward in the NFL as far as having a great career. I could be wrong, obviously, but how do you feel, Ian? You think that Daniel Jones will be a starting quarterback in the NFL for, say, 5-10 years?
I think the jury's still out on that. I think it could go either way with this because I think he's got the some elements to his game to be effective in the NFL. He can be accurate. He showed that in his one drive Friday night that he was out there for. But the problem is, what's your alternative? If not Daniel Jones week 1, what's your alternative? It's Eli Manning, who's a statue back there, who's got no mobility whatsoever, none, zero. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is a tremendous, tremendously mobile, athletic quarterback, but at least he can move around a little bit. And we saw him at Duke, Drew. He'd run the football from time to time. He'd move around in that pocket and try to make something happen when the pocket collapses. Well, guess what? A pocket is going to collapse a lot this season for the New York Football Giants. Why? Because their offensive line still isn't great by any stretch of the imagination. They're starting to put some pieces together, but it's still not an offensive line that I trust against a good, strong front seven. And they're going to see a bunch of them in the NFC East. Philadelphia, hello. Dallas, hello. Tremendous front sevens, tremendous defenses that can get pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. The Giants are going to have to see teams like that. Eli Manning is a dead duck back there when you've got these kind of teams coming after the quarterback. At least with Jones, he can at least give you a little bit more time to maybe escape, try to make something happen down the field. So to me, if you go with Eli Manning, it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's not moving your organization forward. It's the status quo. It's just almost like not a wasted season, but you drafted this guy unexpectedly as high as you did in the first round, Daniel Jones. Why would you not want to get him in there as soon as possible, especially if he has a good showing in the preseason here in August? That's the way I see it. Move your organization forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Tamar saying they should start Jones, release Eli, use the money on receivers, but I doubt they do that. Also, when you release a guy, I believe you get penalized pretty heavily as well. So I don't think you necessarily get all that money. I'm not exactly sure how that works. Paco also asking about the feature to show the comments. Actually, on weekends, it's done by us, but on the weekdays, usually there's guys behind camera like Rafa, Freddie, Larry, and they help out the host as well. So I think Jimmy will be all right with it, but I don't think he'll have to do that on his show. A lot going on the Bag Show, which I know Ian knows. And Ian, I've heard you've done some closing out leche on his show. Is that the way it goes?
Yeah, it is. I'm actually getting sick of doing it, to be honest with you, but I don't mind doing it. I'll be honest. It's fun. And apparently, Drew, you're apparently giving me a run for my money in terms of who's got the better leche outro with Jimmy the Bag. So it's like a little battle we've got going on here.
I've heard that, man.
I've heard that. Man. I know they're trying to fuel this controversy here and fuel some kind of rivalry or hatred between you and I when there just isn't one.
Oh, no, there's no hatred. It's more of a
good buddies. Yeah, friendly rivalry. Yeah, friendly battle. Exactly. Friendly fire, as they say. Yeah. Friendly fire.
Yeah, it's not a quarterback controversy that's dividing the locker room. It's more of a Fitzpatrick and Rosen.
Yes.
Not. I think it actually could be a good thing. Hey, speaking of that, I just want to get your opinion off the top of your head, man. Dolphins over 5 wins. You like that bet this year?
No.
I do.
You do, huh? Wow. Their schedule is really, really rough. Look, I know they came back and beat Atlanta in the preseason game the other night, but there's still, to me, question marks galore with this football team. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, they're talking about he's way ahead of Josh Rosen in training camp. This is another stupid decision by Brian Flores if he makes Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's just like we talked about the same damn situation that we got going on in New York. You got to see what Josh Rosen can do. I don't care if he's been outplayed by Ryan Fitzpatrick. We know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy that's going to have more bad games than not. He's going to give you that one amazing game like he had in New Orleans with Tampa Bay last year. And other than that, he's going to be more bad than good and be an interception machine. This is you traded for Josh Rosen here from Arizona. You got to see what he's got for you. I don't care what he's like in preseason. Got to get him in there, get him reps in the regular season, find out if he's your guy. And if he's not, cut bait and move on and maybe suck this year and then get one of those big time quarterbacks that are going to be coming out next year in the draft. And there's going to be a bunch of them. That is going to be a great quarterback group coming out next year in the draft. So definitely it's to me, this is a no-brainer. Miami's probably going to it sound like he's going to go with Fitzpatrick. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's the problem. Fitzpatrick is a guy that long-term for a 16-game regular season, I don't trust his consistency. And if Rosen does get in there, which he should, Rosen hasn't shown me enough at all so far in the NFL level to trust him. The defense has got holes in it. The offensive line, to me, is not all that great for the Miami Dolphins as well. I just think it's a situation for the Miami Dolphins, and their schedule's just absolutely rotten. The Miami Dolphins, they've got a tough go of it schedule-wise. 5.5, I simply don't see it with them in terms of winning more than that in games this season.
I feel just the AFC East. What we got? 2 games against Buffalo, 2 games against the Jets. I feel like those can be winnable. The
Bills and Jets to me look way better than the Dolphins on paper. Way better. I really think both of those teams can challenge for playoffs if things break right for both of them, the Bills and the Jets. But Dolphins to me are just that's the problem too. The Patriots, you got the Bills and the Jets, who I think are solid teams at the very least. Where's Miami going to go? You got to face those teams twice. And then you've got a brutal non-division schedule this season as well. So I think it's just going to be a tough year for them. I see them maybe 3-4 wins, not 5, and certainly not 6 or more.
All right, man. On opposite sides of that, I haven't betted or anything. I just threw it out there. I think that they got talent around. In the fact, South Florida, Tom Brady is under 500 in Hard Rock Stadium, I believe. I think he's like something like 7-9 in South Florida. So that Pats game in Miami might be winnable if you go by past performance here.
About the Bills, by the way, in terms of them, if they can get any kind of there's another team with offensive line concerns. They've had offensive line problems for years. The offensive line they're hoping is a little bit better this year. Josh Allen, to me, if he gets some time, can be solid. The receiving core is not great. Still not great, the receiving core, but it's better at least than it was last. At least you have a few weapons, a few options to work with now with Foster and Zay Jones, and you brought in Cole Beasley from the Dallas Cowboys. But that defense can flat out play for the Buffalo Bills. That defense looks fantastic. They looked awesome. I know it was a preseason game, but they looked awesome against the Colts in the Week 1 preseason game for them. They're going to be able to shut some teams down and keep themselves in games just with that defense alone. So that defense is going to make Buffalo a real tough out this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And Tomar throwing the Dolphins might, win 6 or 7 games. They got talent. And one thing that kind of put me onto it is the quarterback controversy, like we were just joking with us. It's a 35-year-old guy in Fitzpatrick and under 25-year-old guy in Rosen, and they seem, they're smiling, talking about each other. It's not a situation where it's going to divide the locker room. I think it could actually help them in terms of, especially if they start Fitzpatrick, just because he's the veteran and they got a shot at winning early. So
that's the thing. They have a better shot probably at winning with Fitzpatrick, but we're talking about growing the future, growing the franchise, growing the organization. Ryan Fitzpatrick does. There's nothing he does that can grow the organization in the future. He is a stopgap quarterback. He is a short-term veteran arm. That's about it. You got to find out who's going to be our guy next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years as the starting quarterback. You got to find out if Josh Rosen's that guy. The only way you're going to find out is if he plays in the regular season. And at least as of right now, it's sounding like that may not happen, which is a mistake by Brian Flores.
All right, Ian Cameron on Twitter at Babano. Ian, we're running up against it time-wise, man. Time's kind of flew by. I appreciate everybody in the chat box here. The new feature showing them on the video. I think it's a big ad here by SPR. Thanks.
Quickly before we head out, I'll touch quickly on the other 2 preseason games. We got Dallas, San Francisco. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys, Mike White and Taron Christian. Out of South Dakota State are going to be the quarterbacks that play the majority of the game in the second half. Is that a quarterback duo you trust late in the game with the point spread on the line? Not me. And Dallas is a team that, again, first preseason game. I can't remember the last time they played very well. First preseason game. You look at the San Francisco situation. You've got, obviously, Jimmy G won't play much, if at all, but you got Nick Mullins, dual threat mobile quarterback. He's been around a lot now in the NFL. You've got C.J. Beathard behind him, who's going to get playing time. Wilton Spate as well. After that, maybe a little concern there, but I think San Francisco, again, this is another favorite. I would look toward the 49ers in this game, but markets are in tune with what I'm thinking. They moved this number up as well with San Francisco. They were a 3-point favorite up to 4.5 now. So that's unfortunate. Like all the sides I like pretty much in the preseason today, Drew, you're getting a worse number with them. You're getting a worse number with Oakland. You're getting a worse number with San Francisco. Cincinnati KC to me is not a game I'll probably get involved in quite as much or as much of a strong opinion. From a Kansas City perspective, it's mostly going to be Chase Litton out of Marshall and Kyle Shermer as your quarterbacks in the second half. Rookie quarterback, of course, played at Vanderbilt. When you look at it from a Cincinnati perspective, after Andy Dalton, it's going to be Ryan Finley, the rookie from NC State, Jeff Driscoll, who's been in the NFL now a couple years, and it's going to be after him, Jacob Delegla out of Central Connecticut State. So that is not necessarily a quarterback that I'm as familiar with or would want to have money on. I wouldn't want to have money on Cincinnati with a rookie quarterback and one that I'm not familiar with. And that's probably what you're going to see out of Cincinnati with Delegla in the fourth quarter of that game. So it's a tricky game, that one, Cincinnati, Kansas City for me. I would probably pass on that one. Like I say, I would lean Oakland -4.5. I would lean San Francisco -4.5, but you're getting worse numbers on those two. But those are situations where I don't want the underdog in either of those games. I don't want Dallas. I don't want the Rams. It would be a favorite or pass.
Don Ricci in with the Hollywood, Florida Wham Bam Thank You Man parlay. It's the Mets money line and Giants under.
Seems good like and one last thing, it looks like a lot of the chat, and I know I had a bet on this last night, had the Vikings last night in the preseason. Why not? I mean, Mike Zimmer now is 18-4 straight up, 14-8 against the spread in the preseason as the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings since 2014. 18-4 straight up, 14-8 against the spread. They were getting points. They were 2.5 3-point underdogs last night against New Orleans. Very good preseason quarterbacks, exactly. Tom Marino's got a great point here. Sloter and Mannion. Mannion's been around a while. Sloter's got amazing preseason numbers the last couple of seasons, and he played very well again last night in the victory against the New Orleans Saints. So, Mike Zimmer is one of those coaches, and Minnesota is one of those teams right now where you better have a damn good reason, a really good reason to want to go against them in August preseason football, because they've been a great bet over the years.
Yeah, I like all the names you're throwing out in terms of the quarterbacks, Ian, from college football, like Mannion, Oregon State, all these guys. You're right, and that does matter. Who's playing quarterback in the third and fourth quarter? So we got 3 preseason games tonight. Don Ricci, thanks for throwing that out in terms of marketing your Hollywood Wham Bam parlay. Ian, we actually got to move to best bets. We're up against it time-wise. Only got about 3 minutes left in the show. On Twitter, @Babano. Ian, what are you thinking for best bet for today?
Best bet for today, we'll turn it to the CFL for today. I guess if it was baseball, I'd go Mets for the best bet, but CFL is what I'll do for the best bet. Can only do one. We'll go to the CFL. We're going to go to BC and Hamilton over 51.5. Like I said, Ticats playing this game. Defense has been really good for the Ticats this season, but they're without Delvin Breaux. That is a shut-down number 1 corner out of their lineup today. Frankie Williams going to replace him. I don't think it's quite the same now. There's going to be some openings now for Duron Carter, Brian Burnham, some of these BC receivers for Mike Riley. Can he get protection? If he can, I think BC will make some plays in the passing game. And on the flip side, talking about a BC defense that's given up over 30 points per game on average this season. I know the coach is a defensive mind. He has not figured out a fix for this defense yet. They're coming off a bye. I still don't buy into the fact that that's going to create a fix for this defense. I just don't think they have the players and the quality personnel to play well on the defensive side of the football. And I believe Dane Evans, in his second start at quarterback for the Ticats, will be much more comfortable. 1, because he's at home for the first time in this game, and 2, he's got a game under his belt. He knows a little bit more of the blocking schemes. He knows a little bit more of the timing with his receivers, and he's going to get a big one back from injury today in Brandon Banks as well. I think we'll see some points in a fun, entertaining game with BC and Hamilton. We'll go over 51.5 CFL for best bet.
All right, liking the over in the CFL game. Ian will be at that game tailgating. Check him out on Twitter, @Babano. Hopefully some good stuff on Twitter from the game. And you can see it here on the banner. I am actually going with the NL East matchup we talked about earlier, the New York Mets. Syndergaard with success against this Nats lineup in his career. And I think the Mets, not stepping in front of him, talked about it all the time. Ride the hot, fade the cold. in MLB. I think they have success against Corbin, and we get them under -120 now. It's -119 at Bookmaker and -118 at 5 Dimes. That's what I'm going with for best bet. New York Mets. Ian Cameron on the over in the CFL. I'm on the New York Mets going tonight in MLB. Ian, what else you got to throw out before we shut this down, bro?
No, that's it. And I love your best bet. Mets, definitely. Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. You got to get the song going. But definitely hoping they can keep their win streak going. Great first show. I love the new. By the way, we should point out the look of the show on YouTube. I got the YouTube channel up right now. You can see people with their chat comments right on the bottom beneath our video stream. On the YouTube channel, on the YouTube stream. I think that's fantastic. So I like the new look. I like the new format that we're using now for the closing line moving forward. If it's going to look like this every week, Drew, beat it, Google Hangouts. You can stay away for as long as you want. I think we got a better look and a better format now. So looking forward to doing this every Saturday moving forward.
Absolutely, and I agree with you, man. Follow Google. All right, let's go. Let's new step up here with StreamYard. Shout out to you. I like it as well. Thanks everybody in the chat. Guru Sports, Right Money Line. Thank you for the shout out as well. Don Ricci. Thank you, Paco Healy and gang. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Best of luck with your bets. New York Mets -118, the over in the CFL game. Hamilton, Ian will be there at Babano on Twitter. Follow him. Great follow on Twitter. Best of luck with your bets, guys. We'll be back next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Good luck, everybody.